too bad. Passed away, but
As I said,
he was a good guy.
Okay. All right, we're officially rolling. Good morning. It is Tuesday, December 2nd. This is our work session. And Jean's here to talk to us.
First thing,
All right. Sure.
Excuse me. Now with a cold.
I wanted to speak to you about my budget that I'm asking for next year. As you know, I started back in June in the office. When I came downstairs from my 16 years upstairs with Jen Shaw, the first thing I noticed was the salaries, pretty low. I thought, well, okay, let's just see how things go. So, you know, the last 6 months, observed policies and procedures and, you know, how we do things and the staff. And so as I was working on my budget, I thought, okay, salaries. Kind of a three-pronged test for me. The first one started with merit. Do they deserve a raise? In my opinion, they do. They are the most hardworking people I have seen. They are dedicated. If there's a project that needs to be done, they're working on it. If it's, you know, slow right at the moment, we've got several major projects that we have too many files. We're always moving files. We scan. So we always have projects that as soon as we're a little bit light, they're right on them working them. I don't even have to say it to them. They go into that mode where they know. So as I observed them, I thought, wow, these are really good employees. And I have employees, I have 5 in in the legal office. And they range from, I think the youngest has been here now over 2 years and the oldest maybe about 13 years, which really is a good balance. Anyway, so my first prong was merit. Do they deserve it? They do. They work really hard. The second was, well, I think the salaries look low, but are they low? You know, I came from the judge's office. I don't know how other county offices are. So I reached out to a couple of clerks in adjoining counties to get a feel for what they pay their staff. And I actually have a little salary comparison here that I'm going to provide you all with so that I can
Thank you.
speak to that.
Thank you, ma'am.
I tried to hit counties that were similar to us in size. As you can see, Huron County, I also wanted to know how many employees they had because I think that makes a difference too. And I averaged their salaries. So Huron was the highest, Sandusky County, Hancock County, and then us. And as you can see, there's kind of a wide range, even with what I consider very similar sized counties. So that was my next step was to compare salaries. And I believe we are low based on those. The other thing that I'll just kind of throw out there, of course the 2 newer ones this doesn't apply to, but the other ones, there was, I know, a pretty big number of years where there was no raises. And they stuck it out. And I'm not sure, but I'm thinking 6 or 7 years maybe that there wasn't raises. So I think that is a point to make as well. The last thing, retaining employees. You know, we train them, you know, in my office in particular, maybe other offices will say the same, but there's lots of policies and procedures, and it's not something you're going to pick up in a week or 2 weeks or a month. It's going to be years till you pick up a lot of the things. And I think it's really important to retain the employees. We're training them. You know, we want to keep them when they're trained. We don't want them to go somewhere else. And case in point, the title office just recently had a person retire. She'd been there 26 years, bless her heart. Retire, go enjoy it. Well, then another employee decided to quit. Got a different job, higher paying job. She had been there for 9.5 years. And again, that number of years where we didn't get salary increases, she's one of the ones that got hit by it. So I had an employee who knew exactly what to do, was good at her job, and I lost her because we didn't pay her enough. And not even close. You know, she got a couple of dollars an hour more. Good for her, but bad for us. So now I have 2 employees I'm down. And in a small office, that's a lot. And I don't want that to happen in the legal side either. A number of years ago, I remember when they lost a couple employees in the legal side, and it was, the office was in flux for a while. And it's hard. So when we get them trained, we want to keep them. So three-pronged. Merit, you bet, they deserve raises. 2, are we low? You can see we're low. And 3, we need to retain our employees to keep the continuity in the office, the consistency in the office. You know, when people come in, they want to be able to, we want to give them service. We want to give them prompt service, courteous service, efficient service. But mostly, we want to make sure we know what we're doing, because what we do matters. You know, it matters in all these people's lives. You know, we're the holder of the files, everything that comes into the court system comes through our office, and you know, it's important what we do, and that we do it, not only that we do it, but that we do it right. So with that being said, I will give you, I took our employees and I put down what their wages are currently and what I would like to propose to bring them to. And keep in mind, what I'm proposing is still under those other county comparisons that I had. I didn't try to jump all at once. I tried to give what I thought was reasonable raises, but very much needed raises.
Quick
Jean?
question,
Go
B.
ahead.
You said there's 5 in the legal office. What's in the title
There's
office?
actually,
And this
4
accounts everybody, when you're talking, it's both offices.
but really right now, I'm just talking about the legal office.
Okay.
And the reason being is because the title office is non-general fund.
Okay.
So while I try to be consistent on, or want to be consistent on what I'm paying one side
Sure.
versus the other, we are talking non-general fund versus general fund. So for right now, I'm only talking general fund, legal side, and that's 5 employees.
What's the sum total? I mean, if these raises are granted, what would be the additional general fund expenditure? Is they're gonna raise it $5,000 a year, is it $2,000, is it $20,000
Well,
a year?
the raises themselves will raise it approximately $4,900, which is about a 4.25% increase.
4,900, does that account for PERS and the whole thing, or is that just straight?
No, that's just straight wages.
So that with PERS,
There'd be some more. However, there is a difference between my salary line and what my actual salaries are, and that I inherited. What was appropriated last year was approximately 109,000. The salaries were 116,000. Plus I have a little bit of overtime that we've had to use this year, not very much, but a little. So there's already a differential between that. Now, we made that up by using, we have a foreclosure general special project fund that we were able to use some money from that towards salaries. However, it's too much. There's too much of a difference there between what was appropriated and what we're going to have to use. And I say that because the General Special Project Fund, while I can use it for salaries, I can only use it for salaries that are towards foreclosures, as well as supplies, as well as contract services. So it's kind of a balance there, not to use more than I feel that I should. Foreclosures, let me back up. The Foreclosure Special Project Fund was started in 2009. And that's based on every time a foreclosure is filed, pardon me, $100 goes of that court cost deposit goes to the clerk's office to handle the foreclosures, and $100 goes out to the sheriff's office for them to handle it. And it came about in a time when the county had many, many foreclosures. That has dropped dramatically, the number of foreclosure effectives. I just looked at it maybe last week, and it was 120 some. In past years, we've had over 300 foreclosures. So the idea of that fund was to help out with the extra work that was going to happen with those foreclosures. As you can see, that's dwindling, which also means the fund will dwindle because it's based on how many foreclosures are filed. So I don't believe I'm going to have the access to as much, and at least it looks like that's how it's going now. And while I could maybe put a little bit towards the salary line, I know I can't put as much as the difference is now even.
So basically what you're proposing is there's a disparity between the 116 that is actual and the 109 that is budgeted.
Right.
So that leaves the $7,000 that you're proposing to really get that back on a salary line,
Right.
plus the 5,000 of increases. So so I could make sure I've got my mind straight, you're basically looking about increasing your budget. We haven't even got into the other areas, but from a salary line, about $12,000. Would that be a fair assumption here?
Is that right? Yeah.
So again,
Yes.
I'm looking at the 7,000, which is the disparity between the 116 and the 109.
Right.
That's 7,000.
Yep.
5,000, which is the proposed increases you're talking about.
Right.
Putting those two together, that's where you come up with the 12,000.
Right.
Now, again, we're not looking at
We're not.
any increases in postage or anything else, but
Right.
you're proposing to get it back in line of roughly 12,000 increases plus anything else that you may deem that you need in that
Right, and
area.
I tried to keep everything else pretty close to what it was before.
In your overall
This-
budget,
The supply line, I did ask for more money on that. As you remember, I had come back,
I think about 3,000 on there, 4,000.
I asked for 4,400 back when I first started, because when I started, the supply line was already under, it was like $200.
So that 4,400 is really gonna go on top, so now we're talking about 16,000 would be a fair assumption.
Right, and
And your
with the-
overall budget is,
And with all the salaries, the Medicare PRS, actually, it's about 17,000. So roughly about 8.5% total.
of your total budget.
When you make the arguments for raises for employees, I think we could bring pretty much anyone here except perhaps the judges. I think their pay scale is probably about where comparative to other counties. I think they could use the exact words you used about
Probably
their
so.
people being hardworking and being lower compensated than neighboring counties. I really mean that, whether it was maintenance or this office
You
or
might very
the
well be
auditor, or,
I
I
don't
think they're
know.
all in that same category. And we did was it 3% last year? 3% last year. We're hoping to do something again this year across the board. We have not decided what that will be. It'll depend on a number of things, especially what the Budget Commission gives us to work with, but.
I will say one thing that
Yes.
bothered me, Jeff, just to interrupt you just for a second. The fact that I'm losing 2 employees in title made me, of course, go through the hiring process, which is an interesting process all by itself. But the amount of the starting salary for a new clerk, I didn't know how much to do, and I tried to look at what other offices had done, and I found a figure, and that's what I ended up going with, but it was actually more than 2 of my employees get in the other side. The starting salary for some other county offices, not just mine, is more than what 2 people in my office that have been there for 1 2 years and 1 3 years is. That's not right. That's not right.
Well, I appreciate you sharing with the detail and giving us the detail that you have and what you're needing by all means. And the training factor is exactly what you're saying. That's huge. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's 20%. You know,
Big.
I mean, it's it's worth keeping an employee for 20%. I mean, to not have to go back through that training and knowing that stuff. And you've got some loyal employees. And something you mentioned, unrelated but related to this because it's your office, but not to what you're specifically sharing us with about salaries is, I want to make sure we work with you going forward on this whole storage issue stuff. And I
a
think,
big issue, isn't it?
yeah, it is. It's a big issue and a big concern, and it's on the radar. And I think down the road we definitely have to work with your office on that.
It
and
is for us too.
addressing those needs because there's something we've got to do there. I'm not sure what that's going to be, but I just wanted to mention that before I lost that train of thought. But so I don't know if we need anything else at this time from Jean, but we will certainly have to look at this.
Yeah, well, my suggestion to Gene would be, put your budgets in based on your projections, what you're talking about here. I think the final decision is really gonna come down to once everybody gets their budgets in, and once the Budget Commission authorizes the commissioner how much we got in the till, and then at that, we're gonna have to go through it, and hopefully that everybody can get what they're requesting But I would think at this time, it would be very premature for this commission to make any decision when we don't know what we got in the bank, or what the budget commission is gonna authorize for us, and we don't know what all the requests are gonna come in. There's some extenuating circumstances that are going on in the county right now, and mainly ICE, that we know with President Obama's new immigration law, that's gonna certainly affect the sheriff's department. Now, we just had a meeting with the budget commission this morning and talked about that, and what the actual outcome of that's gonna be for income from the county, we don't know yet. So
Understand?
we hear you loud and clear, Jane.
I appreciate-
Again, that would be my suggestion. Put it in as you see fit, and then the final decision will have to come to us, and it will be a tough one, let me tell you.
I understand, and I have actually already submitted.
Yeah.
Just
Based on
based
all
on-
of your proposals there?
And you understand what I'm saying too about the basic
do.
issue of fairness
I do.
to all employees, so
I
I just throw that out there. Like
And-
Mr. Zoller said, we'll consider all the requests and.
And that's all I can ask.
This, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword. The economy is improving, so that means our income is improving, that's good. But the same token is the economy's improving for other people, so it's becoming, unemployment's going down, it's becoming a very, very competitive marketplace out there in the job market. And the cost of training people is unbelievable in comparison to working with people that know where the light switch is and know what the heck to do every day. I mean, it's,
I agree. I agree. All right, thank
So-
you very much.
Sort of unrelated, but that person that left for a couple dollar an hour raise, did they stay in OPERS?
No,
Because that's worth something, these people need to
No.
consider when they leave, that they
No.
leave the OPERS system, that's.
she did have other benefits. They had a,
Okay.
it wasn't a 401K, but it was
Uh-huh.
that type of system. So they had some pretty good benefits as well. And
Well,
again, it used to be you could depend on the wages maybe not being as high here, but the benefits being a little higher, but I'm not sure that's true.
The
insurance also
used to
was
be,
better.
if you're new starting in it. If you've got years vested, it's a different story, kind of, which that's kind of where we got some loyalty, I think, that we have. I think it helps, because I've already started in the system, but if you're brand new coming into it,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. This one was, more surprising too because of a number of years, but I really think a lot of that had to do with the number of years that she went without a raise as well, so I don't, and
Yeah.
like I said, the insurance was better, there was a little bit more better,
yeah.
or at least more comparable benefits.
Right, right. Thank
Good.
you.
Thank you. Yeah.
thanks, Gene.
Yep.
We didn't have anything else scheduled for work session. But talking about jobs and low unemployment and all those good things, since David Zack walked into the room. There we go. I mean, we got 10 minutes of work session left. Do you want to talk? Anything you want to tell us?
David, I think, fellow commissioners, that maybe now would be a good time in a work session before David says a few words. I'd like to give a little background on this and kind of the request that's coming forward. And I think it's important to understand the background on and what the request is that I will be making to this board. A month ago, I guess it's 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks, whatever, that SIDEC had a strategic planning process, that it was a very intense process, and we set out initiatives and agenda and benchmarks of what we would like to see SIDEC accomplish. I think I think we're on unprecedented times right now. Again, the economy's doing well, businesses are expanding. I think we've got the right person in the job at the right time, and if there ever was something that the stars and the moon and everything kind of aligned up, I think we have it here. We have great cooperation between the county and the city and Fostoria, and just a multitude of things. Okay, we had the strategic planning process, and we outlined a very, very aggressive approach to initiatives and accomplishments that we would like to see out of SIDEC. And David very humbly looked at all of those, and a few weeks ago, we had a executive meeting for SIDAC, and I thought he articulated it very well. He said, informed the executive committee that my group can accomplish every one of the initiatives and objectives that you set forth. It'll be a very aggressive approach. I mean, it's got a plate full. He said, the fact is, he said, with the budget that I have, he said, it'll be impossible to hit all the goals that you set out for it. And it was interesting, at the time, I was sitting across the table from the mayor, and David very eloquently put, he said, I can live within my budget. The way it is right now, I'm gonna have to ratchet it down. You guys have to start knocking off some of the initiatives you wanna do, but I can do everything you wanna do. And the mayor and I looked at each other, and he says, we kind of thought, and we were both thinking the same thing, my God, we're on a roll here. We're in a steamroller, it's moving forward, there's so many positive things. Webster and National and downtown and blah, 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 I could just go on and on and on. And I made a statement that I said, Mayor, if I could get the county to make a 2-year commitment and pony up $20,000, could I put that challenge out to the city? And the mayor come back to me, he said, Fred, if you can get the commissioners to do $25,000 for the next 2 years, he said, I'll do 50. I'll go back to city council to do 50. The shortfall in the budget was $110,000 to do everything that we set forth and everything we wanted to do. And I said, well, Mayor, let me see. Well, if you read the paper this morning, the mayor set the challenge out to the county and approached the city council, which I understand he has very favorable support. I don't know if it was a 2-year commitment or not, David, from the city. My suggestion to the county is to do a 2-year commitment, because what I want to do is, I understand the financial burdens on the county and so forth, but I want to see results. I want to see results. So, okay, you notice I've talked about 25,000 and 50,000. The mayor, in the shortfall is 110,000. The mayor and I spoke again a week ago, and he said, Fred, he said, the problem is this agenda that we've set out for SIDAC is so aggressive. And if he comes up with 50 and we come up with 25, we're still 35 short, that it would be SIDAC and David's responsibility to go out and solicit membership and to increase dues and increase memberships to do that. Well, that means he's spending time to do that, and we already have this very aggressive process to continue the growth that Tiffin and Seneca County is seeing right now. And the mayor said, Freddie said, how about if we do this? If I can get 50,000 out of city council, can you go to the commissioners to get a commitment for $50,000 a year for the next 2 years? That would get well on the way. It would take the responsibility off of SIDAC and off David to get additional membership. By the way, that through last year's membership drive, you were able to raise an additional 100,000, Dave? Mm-hmm. David? Okay, so, I mean, this is a prime example of a public-private partnership that privately, SIDAC has been able to come up with $100,000 of added membership and dues and so forth from the private part. We all realize if the economy grows and employment grows within Seneca County and people are buying more things, we all reap the benefit in government. Going to be increased spending, there's going to be increased tax dollars that are going to be generated, payroll taxes from the city, sales taxes from the county. It's just a win-win-win situation. I'm recommending that we put a 2-year moratorium. I mean, it's the old adage is, you know, we have to pony up, they gotta prove. So my suggestion is that we accept the challenge from the city, and that we would budget in $50,000 for the year 2015, in addition to the 17 that we're already providing. And I know this is very aggressive, fellow commissioners, but I believe strongly that we are at a point, and David can elaborate on this much better than I can, but we are at a point that everything is growing. Seneca County is in the limelight of so many issues throughout the state and throughout the country. We really have an opportunity here to grow. We need to make an investment. And I know it's tough. We just heard from the recorder's office here, and there's going to be an onslaught of them coming here. I hear it. But those are Band-Aids. I believe SIDEC is the true surgery to bring in financial resources long-term for the county. David, you want to elaborate on any of those?
Sure, and Fred, that was great articulation of kind of how we feel. I think what I would add to that is, some of my background is working with counties and working with county commissioners. My first local economic development position was creating a county economic development department for Fairfield County, which at the time was the third fastest growing county in the state. And so I worked directly for commissioners as a head of a department. When I was in Clark County, we were mostly funded by the county, and so I feel like I have some appreciation for the difficult decisions that you have to make. I mean, I heard the elected official, Jean Everett, talk about the struggles that she has. The reason I feel comfortable in the context of many people needing additional resources is that we are a revenue generator for the county from a strictly fiscal standpoint. The activities that we do and the economic growth that we create generates direct county sales tax that provides additional safety services for the sheriff, additional Board of Election services. So some of the requests that they're asking for, we provide additional return on investment. If you look at the projects that have happened this year alone, we're looking at upwards of 30 plus projects, some of those very major. And you do an analysis, a conservative analysis on the tax implications of that. The county obviously gets various sources of tax revenue. The biggest ones are when you bring in a big retail operation that does sales taxable items. So Buffalo Wild Wings, Packetans, and others that we have had direct impact on, including downtown. Some of those businesses that sell things that get charged sales tax, that 1.5% comes back directly. And we know what the average store sales for Buffalo Wild Wings are. We can estimate many of these are $1 million plus in sales taxable sales a year, and you can run the calculations. Secondly, when jobs are created, and we're looking at over more than 400 jobs with more announcements, knock on wood, by the end of the year, when you create an environment, and I always say we don't create jobs, when you create an environment, it's kind of like the farm. When you prepare the ground, and you plant the seed, and you cultivate, and you water, good things happen, right? Farmers don't make the plants grow. That happens in nature, but you do the things to create the environment for that to happen. When that happens, those folks have money to spend in the economy, and I roughly use an average of 15% of what they spend is on sales taxable items. And if you discount that, let's say another 20%, because not all of them are going to be spent here, you can get an idea of what those additional jobs and additional payroll generates. In addition, when you have new construction, there is 9 mills. Of course, it's made effective. There are new real property taxes that are generated, and also when there's new construction, there's sales tax on those construction materials, which are roughly the half. So when you run the numbers and you add some of the discounts to be conservative, the projects this year alone, $12 million in additional payroll when they're all fully up and running, and $16 million in new construction. That translates into over $100,000 in Seneca County sales tax a year. And over the next 10 years, over a 10-year time span, that's $1 million just on the projects that, and we had a different hand in various amounts of that, but we had a significant hand in a lot of that. If you look back at what the county's invested in SIDEC over the last 30 years, it doesn't, and I'm roughly calculating, sometimes it's been 17, occasions. If you average $20,000 and you go back 30 years, that's $600,000. So from a return on investment standpoint, this year alone, $1 million over the next 10 years, and we're going to be doing new projects next year and the year after that. There's going to be more revenue being generated. So pays for the entire investment that the county has made, and then an additional 400,000, which will pay, more than pay for the additional 100,000 that's being contemplated, or at least going to be proposed by the Commissioner Zoller. So when I go back to counties, knowing that you have elected officials there and mandates from justice and different kinds of indigent attorneys' fees and, you know, jails and job and family services, those costs are increasing. And from a fiscal accountability standpoint, I can feel comfortable ethically asking for this, because I see it as this is an investment into us to do an aggressive agenda that will produce more results. It's kind of like, give us more acres to farm, and we will produce more corn, wheat, and soy, beans, to allow the people of the county to enjoy more of the harvest. And so that, I think that's very, very important. The second thing I would add is that, you know, we are, part of the aggressive agenda that we're gonna do is we're looking to do things like develop the next industrial, you know, how do we start developing the next industrial park? How do we start developing relationships nationally and internationally to recruit? That's like farming. You can't cram economic development. You have to develop things over time. And so it could take 4 or 5 years to develop the next industrial park. We have out at Eagle Rock, we got 30 acres and we got about a 15-acre site. We land one project and we have right now no speculative space, no available industrial space in this part of the county. We are working with the Fostoria Economic Development Corporation. They do have some over there, but Tiffin and then the near vicinity and the villages outside of Fostoria really don't have any space or industrial ground. How are we going to work with the villages? How are we going to work with the city of Tiffin to make new opportunities? Literally prepare the ground. So the agenda that we have and the additional funding that we need gives us the bandwidth and the capacity and the acres and the seed that we need to help create additional jobs that I think will produce, I know, based on this year alone, will produce more revenue than you're putting in us, that will support all of the other important functions that county government has, in addition to improving the economy and quality of life. So that would be kind of the financial, direct fiscal accountability, because I think that's kind of one of the hallmarks of this commission, is business-like approach. You have 3 business people up there, and you got to be accountable to all the elected officials and the public at large throughout the county. We're working I would add one more thing, that's 3. The last thing I'll say is we're working very closely throughout the county. So we've had a number of members that have joined us, including Whittick Construction, Alveda Construction, and North Central Ohio is a member, and they like what we're doing. We're partnering very well with the Fostoria Economic Development Corporation. When we do our 1,000 Businesses program, they're part of our system. They're part of Salesforce.com. We're working to go out to the villages to bring on an intern from TU Heidelberg that's going to be working the various villages and be out and about. And so we want to get more coverage there. So we are very much taking a county approach. I was just with Kathy Oliver and Carol Owen down in Clark County doing benchmarking and how economic development and workforce development work together to make sure that the workforce is ready, because that's one of the key responsibilities of county government is workforce development. And so we are doing a lot of partnering, and I think we're getting a very good response from both the private sector. I am very proud that when we looked at our budget and to get us in a good business standpoint, we really went to the private sector, and the private sector responded by increasing our funding, more than doubling it, going from almost 250%, so going to $100,000 of additional revenue. That was a sacrifice. But they believed in what we were trying to do, and 30 plus projects, 400 plus jobs, 60 million in investment is great. As means of comparison, we were in the top 10 in the country last year. The last 2 years were 550 new jobs and 60 million in investment. We've almost got that in this year alone, and we're not done with the year yet. So I'm excited. There's nowhere else besides Seneca County I'd rather be. I think I'm excited about our ability to affect change throughout the county, and excited about what we're doing downtown. I believe from a retail perspective, what we do on the west side of Tiffin and what we do in downtown Tiffin has strong, significant implications for county sales tax and the benefit of all the residents in the county. And so we believe that's important, and that was another reason I came here. So, Fred articulated very well that, but I want to make sure to add some of the fiscal accountability things that are, it's an important part of what you decide, both as an administration and as county elected officials.
Appreciate you being here, and the comments. If we don't mind a couple more, I got a couple questions
Sure.
in lieu of starting the meeting, obviously that should have started. I'd like to continue this and not have to go
Okay.
back to it. David, what do you know offhand from your experience as well as an area, what, let me back up one first. At the beginning, when you first started and we talked about a potential increase and so forth, I don't think the time was right for a number of factors.
Right.
The time is right now because of those factors now. One, we, not that we're the board you answer to, but you've made a lot of progress in a little bit of time, and that's phenomenal, and it's greatly appreciate your enthusiasm and your everything for Seneca County and all you've accomplished, as well as the fact of where the economy's at. But back to the question was, do you know what other counties, I'm sure what we've contributed probably is pebbles in the bucket, I guess, of what other, counties typically you might see counties contributing towards economic development.
Yeah.
Not that we have to do what other counties done, but
Right.
I think that factor, what you just elated and Fred set up, you're talking about the return on that investment that the county does end up seeing.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because you always want to know what your competition or your fellow areas around are doing. It varies widely, Commissioner. But this is certainly an area that's on the very, very low end. There are many organizations and counties that directly fund almost 100% economic development. So when I was in Fairfield County, that was 100% county economic development person funded. In the case of Wyandotte County, it's funded through OSU Extension, which is heavily funded through the county government. So you have a community economic development agent. That happens as well. In addition, and when I was in Clark County, that was a public-private partnership. The county funded that at about 70%. And had been doing that. That organization had been around a while. So that's another benchmark. So obviously 100% and 70% are on the higher end. So it goes from nothing. So if you take Sandusky County, that's completely all privately funded. But I'm a big believer in public-private partnerships. I was at the state level in terms of Jobs Ohio, which is a public-private partnership, and what's done here. And I think that increasing it by 50,000 and kind of showing me way, and Fred, you had asked whether or not there was the mayor had proposed a 2-year commitment. That was indeed what he proposed last night. So just
2-year commitment from the city.
From the city. That this is very much in line in the lower half. It certainly gets it to the level of being, in the bottom quartile of having it significant, of being a relative player. It would put the county at being half of what the city does, which I think is, you have to support the Fostoria economic development. You have multiple things you're trying to support, so that seems to be in the ballpark. But the answer to your question is, the vast majority of other economic development, private or public-private economic development or public economic development, are getting significantly more and would still be giving more than this, but I think this represents an increase that puts you more from like the bottom 5 to 10% to maybe at the 25%.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yes.
Assuming you'd get the 100,000 from the combined entities, what are 3 or 4 things you'd spend it on? You gonna hire another person? You gonna buy land?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's really two different things. One is staff. So we raised the private money to fund. We took over downtown Tiffin. Tiffin Tomorrow integrated in the organization. We raised that budget was about 30,000. So we hired a part-time person. So this would allow us to increase the hours of her to almost a full-time equivalent and hire a 20-hour-a-week intern. Having a full-time equivalent, but it's part of moving us toward a Main Street approach. There is so much going on in the downtown, both from a retail perspective as well as investor perspective. So it allows us to increase the downtown resources in Tiffin. The second thing it allows us to do is hire an executive assistant, administrative assistant, which will allow, we did a time study of the time that Karen Amy and I spend on various activities. And internally operations, it will allow us for a much smarter investment to get a lot of things done so that we can focus on higher value added activities. Karen, for example, has brought in, $5 million in the last 10 years alone from 18 different grant sources. Well, when she's going through the mail and paying bills and doing various other things, that somebody skilled but less. So we did a kind of a salary survey. So roughly half the increase is for that additional bandwidth that Karen, Amy, and I all need in order to grow, plus some additional downtown resources. The other half of the increase, roughly, is going to allow us to begin to do the next industrial parks. There are a number of studies. Once you go through a internal process to look at potential opportunities, you have to start doing environmental studies. You have to do archaeological studies. You have to do soil borings to see if the soil compacts. So professional fees in the neighborhood of budgeting $20,000 just for that for the next industrial park. Branding is another. So increasing our marketing budget to allow. We've had Commissioner Stacy was involved earlier last year, as well as the mayor and the chamber, to begin to look at an overall umbrella brand. And we would put some money in that, but then we have to develop an economic development brand and a downtown brand. It's a marketing thing. It's like having, a logo and a tagline, so that we're all speaking from the same hymn book. So that as we market not only economic development, business climate, but quality of life, we do that in a professional way that really gets people's attention. And it's just like any business that's presenting what they do. So there's some additional funding for marketing from a branding standpoint. Thirdly, there's an increase. One of the things that the board said is we'd like you to go recruit companies nationally and internationally, like happened with Taiho and AFS. And if you look at the last couple of years, rich folk, you talk to Taiho today, you talk to American Fine Center today, the reason they're here is because of rich folk going to Japan, playing golf with them and talking. They loved Rich. And one of the reasons they decided to come here, both companies, were because of SIDC and Rich Folk. So we've already started looking, and we put together a scope of work that where we would go to Europe, we would go to Japan, and we can get half of that covered from Regional Growth Partnership, so we can keep the costs down. And when I've done foreign direct investment when I was at the state for more than a decade, so I know how to do it well, I know how to do it efficiently, and how do we go and begin to build relationships. When you're working on international recruitment and you're working on national recruitment, you have to, it's a relationship with the site selectors, the people that work with companies, finding places. It's the bigger companies themselves. It's being efficient in developing those relationships, because like with industrial parks that take 4 to 5 years to develop, you don't typically meet a company that right then is in the middle of a site selection decision. You develop those, and last time I was in Europe, for example, I met with, in a week, 111 companies. And so that's the kind of, when you got thousands of companies on one site, you can be relatively efficient. And so those are the three biggest. There's a couple other miscellaneous things, but those are the three biggest chunks of the other half. So that's really what, the increased bandwidth allows us to kind of keep the pace, reach out to the 1,000 businesses. And we're I would say we're also, without getting the details of the budget, there are a number of things where we're being efficient and leveraging existing resources. We're going to have 4 unpaid internships working with TU and Heidelberg coming up next year, where we're going to put 1 out in the county and 1 out in Fostoria and 2 here. That's not going to cost a dime, but we're going to make it like an apprentice kind of program, which will be exciting. And that all has to be approved by the board and approved by the universities. But that's one idea of a way we're trying to be efficient with resources. And so we looked at not only the increase in the funding, we looked at the expense lines and worked on reducing it and leveraging. For example, how do we leverage our, we have attorney work done. So when we do lease negotiations for the property that we're in, we're going to have the attorney who did pro bono is our legal counsel doing those for us, so we don't have to pay someone to do that. So we've looked at many things, and again, I'm not going into detail, but I want to make sure that not only do I address what is the increase for, but that we've looked for how do we increase revenue on the private side, and how do we decrease expenses. And so the amount of 110, and then we would still have 10, but we can do that without spending a month, 2 months fundraising, which we would have to do if we wanted to do this, without the increased public support. That's important. I want to make sure you understand that we just aren't like, okay, this is our gap. Any business, and I've run private businesses, you gotta look at, you go through your budget and you look at every line item, you know, how much am I spending on postage? How much am I, you know, looking at your cell phone plans, looking at every single thing to make sure that you're being, because we are public-private, we have to be good stewards of not only the private sector's money, but the taxpayer money. So, I think that's important to mention.
And I'm a big advocate of the public-private partnerships. I've said that for years. That's, I think, just the way that a lot of things need to happen, and it's just sounder that way. I think it shows and it needs and it operates with that cooperation continuing, but it's not that you can lose that piece. And we've got that piece. We don't want to lose that piece. So that's it. Anything else to add? Otherwise, we'll break and go into our formal session.
Yeah, I'm kind of a now kind of person, just you guys ever realize that yet? And SIDC is in the process of putting their budgets together. I think that we as commissioners, we have to look at the priorities here, and in my mind, the priority is security, the sheriff's department, number one, EMS, you know, ambulance, number two, number three, in my mind, is economic development. And from an investment standpoint, we need to make a decision. We need to move forward so that they can get it in their budget. I want this man and I want this department out hitting the road and bringing in jobs, increasing the economic condition of Seneca County as quickly as possible, and not to be dealing with for the next 2 years on fundraising. So, again, I'm more of a now person. I don't know what the next step is, but if my fellow commissioners need time to evaluate this, so be it. But I think we need to move very quickly on it so they can get in their budget, so his department can start making plans to achieve the goals that we set forth of them. And I'm telling you, they are ambitious. They are very, very ambitious.
In order for him to get in his budget, it's got to be in our budget. So we've got.
I understand.
So that's really going to be the next step of where we're at with those things. And I'm guessing the city doesn't have the stamp from the council yet, but it's been presented, and what you're asking your council for, Mayor, is that correct?
Yes, and we've gotten the preliminary yes. If the money's coming, we will have the money. It's a guarantee. We're going to have the money for SIDC for next year.
And we are in that budget process as we started this work session out with one department in about salaries, and I agree, it is one of those top priorities that the county, I think, that the county ought to have. I do want to make sure we're taking care of our employees. That is very much a concern. I've shared that before. And then those safety services, and I think this needs to be in there, that we've got to do something more, way more than we've done. I can't promise you're going to be there now. The 2-year thing, I think that is more of a verbal than anything, because our budget's an annual approved budget. But to make that outreach and effort is certainly can be done, I think, at some level. But that's it. Anything else you want to add? Otherwise, I think
No,
we'll
I'd say the
transition.
same thing that Mr. Soler said to Gene, you know, submit it, we'll consider it, we're putting together a budget in 2 weeks. So, you know, that's not that far away.
No, it's going to be pretty
We'll
quick.
kind of know where we're at, we'll balance it all out and see what
We're hoping to approve
what it
this.
comes down as.
Are we hoping to approve this about the 16th? Okay.
Assuming that we can get it in the budget, would it be the desire of this commission to support this type of initiative? Again, more to,
Yeah, it's the
more
level,
in the
it's the
same
level
tone
we
as with
don't,
the,
it's the level we don't know until we weigh it out with all the other stuff.
yeah, more of the same
And
tone
what the
as
budget
with
commission's gonna give us.
Mid-City Council was, even though they haven't officially approved it yet, it's kind of is a understanding that it is, as long as the money's there, that they would approve it. And I think I would like to see that same type of commitment, that, you know, from this council, as long as the money's there, that we would be supportive of it.
Stacked in with all of the other
We're-
demands. I
we're-
mean,
Yeah, excuse me, I didn't mean to cut you.
yeah,
We're all supportive of SIDC,
yeah.
and
yeah.
we're all supportive of Gene Eckleberry and her needs, we're all supportive of all the other things, we just have to make it, you know, fit in, we're supportive of saving money for a courthouse, Justice Center. We'll do the best we can.
Thank you.
What I'm saying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can't say it'll be a 50,000 number or what it'll be, but we'll do the best we can.
By all means. Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Thank you very much.
At this time, we'll just keep rolling, but we're going to formally go into, because it is 10:20, our regular Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, December 2nd. I'll officially call this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Join me for the prayer. Dear God, thank you for this day. And as we gather today for the conduct of county business, please be with us as we do the best as we can and to serve. And as we've entered into this season of the celebration of your son Jesus, may we all keep those things in mind as we're serving you and serving this county. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Stacy?
Here.
Commissioner Zoller?
Here.
Commissioner Ledger?
Here.
Okay, signing of the journal, and I'll accept a motion of the DVD recording from our previous board session, Tuesday, November 25th, and the index.
I'll move.
Seconded.
Motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved, thank you. All right, that'll bring us to adjustments to the agenda. Do we have any adjustments needed on the agenda?
I had someone contact me about hunting on county property we need to discuss.
Okay,
Is that hunting for elected officials or?
It's open season right now.
anything else to be added on the agenda? No, okay, all right. Then let's start with the hunting and just get that right out of the way before you forget it. And then, because we have no old business of any, okay.
Fella called over the weekend, actually we traded messages about goose hunting at the county home area. And I did call the sheriff, and the sheriff said it was fine with him as long as they let him know before they go. They get a little nervous and people shooting guns behind the building. But he was fine with the hunting and actually a little excited about it to get rid of some of those geese. So I told him I'd bring it up to the board, and I think in the past we allowed it. I don't remember if it was goose hunting or what it was, some sort of hunting we allowed, but
Yeah.
it's up to the board whether they want to allow it or not.
I certainly have no problem with that. The geese are gonna be a pain.
Yeah, that's fine, we've done it in the past.
Do we want to just allow sheriff to approve those?
He said as long as the person came and checked in with dispatch, we're gonna be here this day, that it was fine with him. So if it's okay with the board, I'll call the individual and let him know it's all right.
Certainly has to clear it with the sheriff for the
Yeah,
dispatch before he starts shooting the gun out behind it.
And he has to obey all the regular hunting
Hunting
laws
laws, yeah.
that exist out there, get a license and all that. Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll begin with the bill vouchers.
Okay, bill vouchers 116 to 118. I have a resolution authorizing an appropriation adjustment within the Housing Revolving Loan Fund, 194, moving $1,100 from other expense, admin expense to other expense. I have a supplemental decrease to the permit appropriation for the Soil and Water Fund, 042, reducing travel by $1,000, reducing advertising by $518.37 for total reduction $1,518.37. I have a resolution authorizing a fund transfer be made to the Public Assistance Fund 030, moving $64,592.50 from the general fund to the county share fund of the public assistance. I have a resolution authorizing an appropriation adjustment within the capital projects fund 115. This is moving $10,000 from the ag building to the RTA building. I think we originally had put ag money in the ag for some of the carpet and different things. Initially in the budget, that was already taken care of the previous year, so I don't know why it's still in there. And the RTA is for the unit on top of the building that you guys authorized last week. And a supplement to the permit appropriations for the youth center construction fund, 217, putting $3,670.33 into their contract services line. This is to get all of the expenses closed up for the youth center construction. I have a resolution adopting the Seneca County multi-jurisdictional natural hazard mitigation plan, retroactive to November 25th, 2014. This has been a countywide collaboration with different entities coming up with this plan. They've spent probably a good year working on this, if not more, working on this plan. So they finally got it approved. I have a resolution authorizing a contract service agreement with A&D Excavating LLC for the Fitzpatrick property for the Ohio Water Pollution Control Loan Fund, HSTS program, pending prosecutor's approval. And that's all the resolutions I have.
Right, do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve it as mentioned.
I'll second.
A motion and a second to approve resolutions as stated. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Is that hazard, that's Dave Gross's thing, or is that Dan's?
That's Dan's.
That's Dan's,
Yep.
okay.
Sandy Wagner has come up from the state and has been helping us with that. And, yeah.
All right. Seeing no comments or concerns, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Wagner,
Yes.
Commissioner Zoller,
Yes.
Commissioner Sexton.
Yes, all approved, thank you. That completes the new business on the agenda. Will bring us to an opportunity for citizens' comments. So at this time, they'd like to comment. Mayor?
Thank you. I'll just be brief and short. I'm just here to let you know probably what you already do know, that the city is ready to support SIDEC with an additional $50,000 of funding. Of course, as you mentioned, it would be a verbal commitment for the second year, as we cannot encumber funds to future councils. However, we are fully committed at this time to going in with the $50,000 each of the next 2 years. I see it for many different reasons, and I'll be very brief with it. The main reason is because the residents told me when I ran for office, and I believe told both of you, and I think, sorry Jeff, but you were elected before I was mayor, so I really don't remember a lot of your promises or political campaigning, but I do remember Fred and Holly's very well. You both ran on job creation and economic development in the community. And the guy that does the most of that is the man sitting right next to me, and I don't think any of us want him spending 2 or 3 months of his time fundraising additional money. Because regardless if the county does not get that money, I think we're going to try to put our heads together and figure out how we get that privately. But at the end of the day, that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort that could be spent on job creation and job growth. And the residents want jobs, they want high-paying jobs, and they want more of them here in Tiffin and in Seneca County. I think they want that more than anything else. I think they want that more than they even want their streets fixed, and they want their parks improved. There's a thirst for jobs right now in this community. And to me, it was a no-brainer when this was discussed at a SIDEC meeting to give them the additional funding. We hear it time and time again. Jobs is the buzzword. We've got our unemployment rate down in Seneca County to one of the lower rates in the state. We're making waves down in Columbus. They're hearing what's going on here. Other communities are flat out jealous of it. I hear it at my other places I go with our NOMA meetings and other different associations that I'm a part of across Ohio. There are a lot of communities that are downright jealous of the good things that are going on here in Tiffin, Ohio. One great example of the successes at SIDEC, our city income tax returns are up 9.6% to last year. That's the equivalent, if that holds true for the year, of almost an additional $750,000 of additional revenue. That's because the private sector created jobs and SIDEC making the right environment for those jobs to be created. And we see the momentum, so we want to continue that momentum and continue to see growth. Now is not the time to pull back. If anything, now is the time to put more money in economic development. So I ask all of you to strongly consider it. Vote on this issue when the time comes at the next budget hearing or whenever you're prepared to do so. But please support this. It is the single biggest vote that you can do for not a whole lot of money to really get bang for our buck and do what the voters expect us to do and create jobs here in the community. So I ask you to all strongly consider that. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mayor. Anything else for citizens' comments? Seeing none.
Move we adjourn?
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned 10:31. Thank you.